Welcome back to another episode of the Trusted Podcast. It gives me great pleasure to introduce not one, but two new faces to the studio. The first of which is our newest team member and trusted ambassador, Lucy Dolan. Welcome.
Thanks, Will. Super excited to be here and be working with you all. Can't wait to get stuck in. Today, however, we're joined by Steve Hunter, Head of Distribution at Momentum Global Investment Management. Throughout his 20-year career, he's gone from signing off payslips to managing large distribution teams, and interestingly, recruiting a lot of people very new to this industry, including myself. So a really familiar conversation with Steve today.
Sit back, grab a cuppa, and enjoy the content. Steve Hunter, welcome to the Trusted Podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
No, you're very welcome. Is this your first podcast?
It is the first podcast, yeah, certainly with visuals. People think I've got a face for radio, I think, so.
Well, I'm looking forward to having you on. So we just want to kick things off right at the start. Really curious about your journey and how you got into sales. Tell the audience a little bit about that.
Okay, good question. Let me think back all those years. So I started, probably late 80s in a business called The Royal, which I don't think exists anymore. It then became Royal and Sun Alliance, which might be more familiar. And I was in operations and doing various new business tasks and moved around a little bit in there. And then I reached the heady heights of being a finance manager. And I thought, at that point, I'd arrived, finance manager. And you laugh at this because this shows how long ago it was. They paid bonuses by check, yeah? And I'd reached the heady heights of, I signed the quarterly bonus checks, yeah? And I'm signing these checks and I'm looking at the names on these checks and I'm thinking, wow, these guys are earning that a quarter. They must be incredible. Yeah, if I can find a way of meeting up with the people who these checks are made out to, then I'm bound to learn something. So I got the opportunity to meet up with the individuals. It was a conference or a sales meeting or whatever. Went along, and they were impressive people, but they weren't these titans that I thought, were worth all this money. And it was over the course of the next few days, I thought, I could go and do that. I could throw my hand in for that. I'm as good as those people. And the rest is history, really. I stepped back from finance, moved into sales, took a cut in money initially, which was a big shock, both to me and my wife at the time. Not my wife at the time, I mean, back in that time. She'd get annoyed if she listens to this and I say my wife at the time. And just moved forward from there, really. And bonus, started getting those checks I'd been signing myself. And I've just found it a really, really rewarding, but rewarding in lots of ways, career. So yeah, that's how I started.
Never looked back since you came in?
No, not at all. Not at all. And the journey that I've had, I've only ever worked for, I was thinking before we kicked off, I've only ever worked for 5 businesses, which when you see people's CVs and they've got a longevity of career, a similar length to mine, 5 businesses is small, yeah. And I've tended to move around in those businesses and be almost promoted from within, which I think is fantastic recognition because, if somebody sees what you're like on a wet Wednesday and they still want to hire you and promote you, then that's got to be great recognition, hasn't it? So yeah, I've had a varied career on the sales side of things, from BDM, regional manager, strategic accounts director, which was a really rewarding role. Took me into lots of different areas. Head of sales, and then today head of business development at Momentum. So yeah, it's been good.
Brilliant. And just as a side note, we probably see far more people in this modern era moving between businesses.
Yeah.
As a hiring manager, what's your opinion when you see that somebody has stayed the course for a long time versus somebody who may have 3 or 4 businesses in a relatively short period of time? Is that a red flag to you, or is that just something that, as long as they can explain their position, doesn't really make a dent?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a red flag per se. I think if I see somebody who's been with a business a long time and worked their way up in a business, I think that's a positive, because it shows loyalty and it shows that they were willing to sort of do the hard graft and move up in that business. I think some people just want new challenges sometimes, and they outgrow the business that they're in. And so long as at interview stage they can explain that, I don't see it as a red flag necessarily. If somebody's had 4 or 5 roles in rapid succession, I might ask the question and think, but yeah, it wouldn't put me off initially, no.
And moving throughout your career from BDM to sales management, we were just talking about it last week. A lot of good BDMs naturally want to be good managers, but it doesn't always work that way. What was it that encouraged you to go into management from sales?
That's a good question. I think if I think about my early career as a BDM, I always got fantastic satisfaction. The first business I worked in, the manager always encouraged new BDMs to go out with existing BDMs. Yeah. I found that really interesting when I was on the receiving end of that, because I learned just as much from going out with the really good people. I could do that, or that was good. I learned just as much from the really bad people as well, because I was thinking, I'd never do that. That doesn't work. And then as I progressed, I was then on the delivering end of that. The manager would say, go out with Steve. He's been a BDM for a while. And I got a lot of satisfaction from passing on hints, tips, mentoring, and seeing people develop and flourish. And that naturally took me into management, because I think if you listed down all the things that are, let's say, a sales manager, let's give it its generic term. If you listed down all of the things that a sales manager does, it'd be quite a long list. But in my opinion, right at the top of that list has to be getting the best and delivering the best to the people who work for you, and making sure that they're the best that they can be. And if you consider that a priority, and I do, then you get to do what you really enjoy 90% of the time. And who wouldn't want a role that delivers that? So that was the catalyst really to move into management. I mean, don't get me wrong, sales management is a bit like an iceberg. It looks great at the top, and then there's a load of stuff underneath that perhaps is less enjoyable. But ultimately, if you want to do well as a sales manager, you can only do that through the people that you manage. So therefore, they have to be your main consideration, and making them the best that they can be has to be the priority number one, doesn't it? So, and if you enjoy doing that, then why not?
Definitely. And I think that shadowing really pays its dues. It's something that I've done throughout my career. It's the reason why we've created this community, because BDMs, it can be quite an isolating role. And we want people to be around that high performance and learn from other people in different businesses. We obviously worked together for 4, maybe 5 years.
I wasn't going to mention that, but as you brought it up, yeah.
And I obviously took a lot from you. I shadowed you in the early days. And then even to this day, I see myself using those techniques, and I'm passing them on to junior people in my team. I guess on the flip side, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And we went through times where sales were down due to market conditions, things that were out of our control. How do you as a manager keep your sales team motivated when the tide's against them?
Yeah, good question. I think I'm a glass half full kind of individual. So I naturally have a positive outlook, and I think that's a must. I think when I'm hiring people, one of the things that I look for is resilience. So you're absolutely right, and I like that expression. I'm gonna keep a mental note of that. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. I'll use that. But I think obviously you will have times like that, either as a team, as a business, as an individual, and I think it's drawing on the potential positives, what you can do to change that, and just having that resilience. Just having that resilience. And I think if you can engender that in the team, point one, if you can hire people who've got resilience, and you can question that at interview, and you can engender that in the team, and you can have that sort of glass half full positive outlook and say, well, we know this, but we know the reasons why, and here's what's coming, and this is why it'll be better, and this is what we need to do. I think if you can engender that and communicate that, then it carries you through the difficult times. The lack of sunshine and rainbows, let's say.
You've got this aspect, I suppose, where you've already alluded to it, that not always is there a correlation between the best salespeople and the best sales managers, but there will be people in the trusted community who are sitting as regional sales reps, who are considering their next step into management. For those people, I suppose a two-part question. For those people who are considering moving, what can they do to get ahead to make sure that they're in the position to get that sales job? And for those people who are more established and longer in the tooth, who are in the sales position, how do you maintain and kind of keep the culture?
Well, let's cover the first part. So you've got people who are business development managers now and looking to move into management. I think I'd circle back to something I said earlier about having a real passion for developing people and seeing people grow, and I suppose seeing people get better than you are. And I give you example number one, sitting next to you, seeing people get better than and more capability than you have. And if you can take a lot of reward from that, then you've probably got the right DNA to be a sales manager. You're absolutely right. Not every good salesperson would make a good manager. I don't think you can be selfish. I think you've got to absolutely share and collaborate and encourage and get the best out of the team and the people who work for you. I don't think it's necessarily as rewarding. It can be, but it's not necessarily as rewarding as being a sales. As a salesperson, you are absolutely in control of what you do and the rewards that you get. As a sales manager, you're reliant on the team to deliver that. So again, it circles back to, well, you've got to really focus on those individuals in your team being the best that they can possibly be. So how do you do that? That's priority number one, as I said earlier. And if you can question yourself, and the honest answer comes back that yes, I can do that, then you're probably right to step into management. And then your second part of the question was older hands. You mean people who've been a BDM for
people who've been sales managers, may not be as experienced as yourself, but are keen to maintain a good quality culture within that team. How do you mentioned about leading from the front before, how do you apply that so that your team are just firing on all cylinders all the time?
I think it, again, without being repetitive, I think it is about that positive outlook, and it's about managing people as individuals as well. Because I think back to the teams that I've managed in the past, and I've never hired people who were absolutely in my image. You need that diversity within the team, but with that diversity comes a difference in management techniques. So you do manage a team as a collective, but actually it's really important to manage people individually within the team. And if you've got people who are really experienced, then there's a different way of managing those individuals than it is somebody who's coming in new to the role. And I think it isn't one size fits all. And I think once you realize that, you become a better manager and a better sales leader, always round. I also think it's about really, I suppose, spotting people doing things right. And a lot of managers that I've seen don't do enough of that. I read a book years and years ago called The 1 Minute Manager. And I can't remember much of this book, but I remember it saying, catch people doing something right and notice it and mention it. And I think if that's delivered genuinely, even if things as a whole aren't going positive, if you can spot those little positive shards and mention it and comment on it, I think that then just engenders to this positive outlook and a more positive culture. Plenty of, I dare say, poorer sales managers will spot people doing stuff wrong, and everybody makes mistakes, but it's how you notice that and pick up on that. So I'm a big advocate of spotting people doing stuff right and focusing on that. So
I think that recognition piece is really important as well, and something that's come out of our interviews so far is that as BDMs, we can have a bit of imposter syndrome, or perhaps we step into a role and we're in that growth phase, we're out of our comfort zone. So recognizing good habits is a really great thing, and it helps people build confidence, which then ultimately gives them confidence to then go and speak to other people and hopefully raise more money as well. You've obviously hired a lot of people. You're talking about the importance of having a diverse workforce, like different ways of thinking, different ways of doing things. But if you could summarize, maybe are there 1 or 2, 3 key attributes that you look for when you're in that hiring phase?
Yeah, I think there are. So there's all of the obvious ones, like being organized. So again, I read lots of books and I never remember who wrote them but certain things stick in my mind. So you might remember this one, Lucy, because I think I've mentioned it to you before. There's and I don't know how true it is, but there's an old sales adage that people buy on the 5th meeting, but only 10% of salespeople get to the 5th meeting. Yeah. So 90% never get there. Yeah. So that organization, if you're dealing with a big area, big geography, how are you going to know whether you've seen people once, twice, 3 times? How are you going to know when to do the follow-up, etc.? So being organized, but that's an obvious one for me. That I suppose the 3 attributes I look for: a positive outlook, but I'd temper that with being realistic. So I'm not looking for somebody who's gushingly positive all the time. Sometimes things are challenging, and you need to be realistic about that. And you can have a positive outlook and look for how you change that environment or how you change things, but you got to be realistic with it. So I'm looking for that. I guess the second thing I'm looking for is coachability. Circles back to what I said earlier about one of the big rewards I get is helping people be the best that they can be. But not everybody wants to be coached. Not everybody's willing to learn. So I'm looking for that almost sponge-like sort of keenness to learn, and
humility as well that comes with that.
You're absolutely right, Will. Humility of, I don't know everything. I'm still learning today. But I'm looking for that coachability within a team. And lots of people that I hire are relatively new into sales. And I like that because they're keen to learn, keen to be coached. And I guess the final thing that I look for is somebody with a collaborative mindset. Because you said earlier about sales being quite an isolated role sometimes. And I think some people are very focused on them and what they do. And if we think back to all the success we've had as salespeople, it's always been more of the team success. A salesperson's only as good as their marketing department, is only as good as, if you're talking about asset management, their investment department is only as good as the team of people that they're in. So I'm looking for people who are really comfortable and engender collaboration, and that team spirit. And I always have those things front of mind when I'm interviewing people, and the questions that I ask are really sort of to draw out, are you positive but realistic? Are you coachable? Are you collaborative? They'd be the key 3 things I think about. Yeah.
I mean, we've all worked with those people who would be happy to be the best of a bad bunch, and I can see that from a mile away. That we then talk about the bit that you mentioned earlier about the best sales leaders, not necessarily, or best salespeople, not necessarily being the best sales leaders, because you've got that mindset of wanting to isolate yourself. And I think that Justine Randall hit the nail on the head when we were talking about remuneration, and kind of leads on to the next point. She said about how, I don't mind if my sales team earn more than me because it means the company's winning. And I think you talk about these things. Nobody ever talks about the headline figures of, oh, well, aren't company X doing rubbish, but the Southwest guy's not doing too bad.
Well, being the best salesperson in a failing business, isn't that great, really, is it? So you're far better to be, well, the best salesperson in a winning business. And then if you're the best salesperson, are you sharing the ideas that made you that good? Are you standing up in sales meetings, in a collaborative way and saying, "Oh, this is what I do. Won't work for everybody," and then encouraging others to do the same. So you're right. It is. It's key that. It is key. In terms of, I saw the session that Justine did. She set the bar really high for these, didn't she?
She really did. We went off with a bang.
Yeah, and at the minute, I think I'm limboing underneath it, but
you're doing
we'll
great.
See. We'll see. But yeah, back to you touched on remuneration there. I've got some really clear thinking around this, and I'm not sure it's that different to some of the comments that Justine made. So I'm not a big fan of cap bonus schemes. I think that sort of nullifies people wanting to really, really, ramp it up and move forward. I'm also not a fan of discretionary bonus schemes. The bonus that you earn, be it an annual bonus, a quarterly bonus, shouldn't be a surprise. You should be able to work out what you've done, how you've contributed to that business, and the bonus you should get. And the best schemes are the ones that people can almost calculate
transparent
themselves. Yeah, very, very transparent. I am a big fan of a reward scheme that looks at the inputs as well as the outputs. Because you don't get sales unless you make the calls. You don't get sales unless you do the meetings. You don't get sales if you're not collaborating with the broader team. So all of the, I think it's pretty key to measure those inputs as well as the outputs, which is the flows or the sales that come through. And I've always been a big advocate and a creator of schemes that do just that. And I haven't got a problem with people earning more than me. Most of the people who work for me earn more than me. And in my career history, when I've been most successful, most of the salespeople who've worked with me have earned more money than me. And I haven't got a problem with that because it shows that we're a successful business doing the right things.
I think it's interesting you mentioned about the uncapped structure as well. And obviously BDM's typically like that. And interestingly, at my company now, we talk about achieving our target. So raising 100% for the year. That's the minimum. That's not job well done, Lucy. You've had a great year. That's the minimum expectation that business expects of me. So having that uncapped structure really enables and encourages that. Let's shoot for the stars and see where we land.
And I'm guessing, and I know you of old when we worked together, the target is table stakes for you. You'll have your own individual target that will be set by you and worked towards by you. And it'll be bigger than the company target. And if you've got a remuneration scheme that rewards that extra sort of effort and that extra sort of drive, then that's the sort of scheme you want and the sort of people you want working in it. So,
we had a quick chat. When we did the initial discussion, when we were outlining what the structure of today's question would be, one of the key attributes that kept coming up time and time again was the ability to listen. Now, we've spoken about humility and the importance of that, but where do you see listening factoring into successful sales processes, both when working with the clients and, as you say, when working with the team?
Yeah, it's a really good point there. And it's something that I look for at interview, and I should have said it earlier, as well as the coachable and the collaborative. Yeah, it is something that I look for at interviews. And the reason I think it's important is the best salespeople ask the best questions. I've sat alongside really, really good salespeople, present company included, because she'll only kick me under the table if I don't. But present company included. And they've asked questions and I've thought, wow, what a fantastic question to ask. And you can see the advisor, if that's the client that you're talking to, really pause and think about the answer, because maybe it's not the usual sort of interrogative techniques that some lesser salespeople might deliver. But then if you ask a really good question, how important is it to listen to the answer and really listen? And I've seen, and I've been guilty of this in the past, people wait to speak. They've got their questions written down. They ask a really good question. The guy gives some, or whoever it is, gives some fantastic answers. And then they ask the next question on their pad. And I'm thinking, what about all the good stuff that they've just said? Why aren't we referring to that? So I think listening's really, really important. And some of the best sales engagements I've been in, the salesperson's spoken 30% of the time. They've asked really good questions. They've listened to answers. They've picked up on detail in the answers. And the most powerful phrase I've heard is, well, as you were saying, which shows I'm listening. I'm referring to something that's relevant to you. I just think it's a really, really underappreciated skill. It's something I should do more of. I talk too much, but then it is a podcast. It'd be boring if I was just listening, wouldn't it? But I do. I think it's a really underappreciated skill and something that the most successful salespeople I've seen do a lot of.
I saw on a podcast recently as well that they were saying that the best salespeople, if you can master improvisation, then your career will just skyrocket, because going back to what you said, you're actually listening to the person in front of you. You're not showing up to that meeting saying, you're going to buy my slides today, I'm going to talk you through this PowerPoint. You're asking questions to understand, and then your pitch is so relevant to what they're after.
Yeah.
It just completely changes the game.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. And I think it's important. I think it's important to have a framework when you go into a meeting. I've seen people go into meetings and you can almost see they've got a blank sheet of paper in front of them, and you're thinking, oh, what we're going to talk about. So there's an absence of a framework. But then you're absolutely right, Lucy. I think if you're too rigid, you can miss something there. So it's having that framework and those parameters and being able to move around inside that.
And I think we've all been there as BDMs. We've maybe expected to do a roundtable CPD event and we've got our slides. We're waiting to plug in the laptop. There's no screen. Infrastructure isn't there.
Yeah.
So it's about being agile, being able to be dynamic on the spot and say, right, okay, I'll use the whiteboard that's behind me. Let's get the crowd moving. So I think improvisation is really important.
It's a good test. I might bring that into interviews and just unplug the electricity and say,
there you go.
I did a breakfast or a lunch event in February, and there was 30 advisors in the room, and I had quite an in-depth investment management slide deck to run through, talking about America and all the things that were going on, and my laptop wouldn't plug in. And so for the first 5 minutes, my temperature, I think my core temperature rose by about 5 degrees. I'm just sitting there at the front wiping my brow. But in the end, realised there was nothing you could do about it. And so it was just going to have to be a case of improvisation. As you say, thinking on your feet, and just don't take any feedback at the end because I can't deal with the criticism.
I'm sure you were great. There's a direct correlation, isn't there, between how infuriating the tech can be and how many people you've got in front of you. So if you're presenting to one person, the tech all works. If you got 300 people, there's going to be an issue.
Although I do think I look back, even some of the sessions that I've done, I've connected with the audience so much more when I'm not concentrating on the slides behind me. And I think when you look at the best presenters, when you look at TED Talks, anything, they're just connecting with the audience. They're telling stories, they're engaging, they're not worrying about what's coming on the slide after it. So I think just finding that balance, as you say, is really important.
Yes. Storytelling, again, is a really underappreciated skill. And I think if you can, some of the best presentations I've seen have a lot less words, and they're just pictures, and they're just people just talking to the audience, and you're writing, engaging. And I think being able to tell a powerful story is so impactful sometimes. lesser presenters will have a formula and read off slides, and I think if you can get to that point, but it comes with practice, it comes with confidence, doesn't it? It comes with practice and confidence, and I think it's a really big skill to have that. I think I see so many, and when I was strategic account manager, we do a lot of road shows, and I see so many BDMs from businesses who, if the presenter had an accident on the way there, they would not get up and present. And that blows my mind, because I'm looking for people who almost are chomping at the bit to get up, are standing in front of me saying, well, I want to present this one if I can. And the team I've got now, we did a round of road shows about 3 months or so ago. And they specifically requested they wanted to present at those road shows. Yeah. And the difficult thing was I presented some and they presented some, and every one of them got a rating. And they got a higher rating than I did, which is really annoying, isn't it? I put it down to the audience in Norwich, difficult people to please, but no, it's important, that connection with the audience. Yeah.
And I think you mentioned about the importance of asking the right questions and trying to elicit information that gives you the opportunity to direct a conversation in whichever way you see fit. One of the things that seems to come up all the time, which in some ways is a contentious issue, we were even talking about it just outside, was about qualifications and further development. And Brian McLaughlin, who's the head of sales at Octopus, was on the pod recently, and he spoke about he went to do an MBA off his own back. And the reason he did that was he wanted to level with advisors who in some circumstances may be accidental business owners,
yep,
and start to ask them questions about their business, their pain points, on an equal footing.
Yep.
There are lots of different routes for qualifications. What's your view on that, on the importance of qualifications for indicating success?
So I think I've got a couple of views. So the first is, you mentioned, I think, Lucy, imposter syndrome earlier, which has never been something that I've suffered from, but I know that some people do. I think having a level of qualification can help with that. Yeah, I do think it gives you confidence that I'm as well qualified as the people that I'm talking to. I also think that having the same qualifications as your clients, or a level of qualifications of your gives you credibility. Yeah, I do think it gives you credibility. Coming back to what you said, I've never worked in a business that's got a big shiny training center. Yeah, I'd love to work in a business with a big shiny training center and bust people off. Bring them back when they're fully formed. However, every business I've worked in, I've been a really, really big advocate of, if somebody wants development, if they want to do an MBA, or they want to do the IMC, or they want to do, the QCA level exams to get better at what they do, then the company should support them through that. I don't think there's a magic wand in terms of, I've got these qualifications, so therefore I'll be great. Yeah. But I think if you've got, it comes back to that sort of drive that you'd want from your salespeople. You want your salespeople saying, I want to present, stick me on a presentation course, that'll develop me. I want to be at the same level as my advisors. Put me through these exams, that'll develop me. So you want that hunger to grow and get those qualifications. So I think if you can have a business that supports people's eagerness to learn in all of the different shapes and sizes that they might want to do that in, then that's no bad thing.
It's probably one of the reasons why we went down the route that we have done with Trusted, because you mentioned you've not worked for a business with a big shiny training centre.
No.
Neither have we.
No.
And
where is this business?
Where is this magical business centre on the hill? And I think that as we've come through the process, we recognise that Momentum's a good business, Triple Point's a good business, and we're really lucky to have those mentors around us that have helped support us through that process. But it's becoming rarer that we see dedicated training specifically for sales teams, and I think that's why we wanted to bring you in and for people to learn from your experiences, to give people that outlet, to give people that opportunity to get ahead without having to do something formal that costs a bomb, that gets in the way of the family life or the day job.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And when I think back at my career, I do a lot of reading, which isn't that expensive to do. I pick up books in train stations and airports. It's even cheaper actually, because sometimes I don't even buy them. I just read them I just stand there and pick out the key points. I'm very good at sort of scanning stuff. So you can pick up a lot from that. I've referenced a few of them in the discussion today. You can pick up a lot of self-development from that. But a lot of the things that I've learned have been through the mentors that I've worked for. And if I can take some of that and pass it on to the people who work for me, then all good. And I was thinking in the car as I headed up here, there's probably three managers that I've worked for in the past that I'd reference have really sort of done things that's impacted me. So when I first joined at Royal Sun Alliance and I moved into sales, I worked for a Scottish guy, Ian Heggie. He's unfortunately no longer with us, but this guy was really bold and dogmatic, as typical Scot really. And he instilled on me discipline and organization, because that was his comfort blanket. If you're disciplined and you're organized, you'll be a success. And I thought, I'll take that. I'd come from an administration background, operational background. I thought that'll hold me in good stead. And then more recently, I moved to a small business where I thought I could really make a difference. So I'd worked for big businesses down in London for a good few years. I'd moved back up to Liverpool, joined a small business where I really wanted to make a difference. And David Thomas, the CEO at the time in that business, reminded me of the power of collaboration. The fact that it wasn't, I was the only salesperson in that. I was head of sales, but I was head of nothing really. It was just me, and then I recruited some people into that business. But he reminded me that we can't achieve things as salespeople just in isolation. We need the marketing team, and they need to come on the journey with us, and we need the investment team, and they need to come on the journey with us. And then, most recently, working in Momentum, my sales leader there, my boss there, also the CEO, is a chap called Ferdy van Heerden. And Ferdy is the hardest worker I have ever met in my career. And he has a saying that says, people can be better than I am, but nobody can work harder than I do. And I thought, well, that's a challenge. So it encourages you to work hard, but also resilience. And I referred to earlier about having that sort of glass half full positivity. He epitomizes that. And none of those things are groundbreaking, but I think you look at leaders sometimes in a business and you can see what really defines them. And it reminds you of some of the good things that you've got in the armory as well, and brings that to the fore. But yeah, being mentored, I think, has been invaluable in my career. And yeah, I've seen some of the people you had on these podcasts, and I think all of us are trying to pass on some hints, tips, good stuff to people in your age group, your demographic. And if some of that works, then there's nothing not to like with that, is there?
And you talked about you've recruited a lot of younger people, like new people into sales throughout your career.
Yeah.
If you were speaking to an audience of maybe graduates or younger individuals thinking of a career in sales,
Yeah.
what sort of encouragement would you give them about this industry that we're part of?
I think if it was that audience, so I think back to when I started on the sales side of things. I've had a really varied career, really varied. If I was sat behind a desk every day, I think I'd go mad. Lockdown was really difficult for me because I want to be out meeting people and engaging people. And I think a lot of people think sales is really, really difficult and complex. And actually, if you've got if you've got an attribute of enjoying meeting new people and enjoying asking questions and enjoying listening to the answers and reacting to that, and you quite like getting up on your feet and presenting to people, or you think you've got the attributes to be able to learn that, then sales can be a really rewarding and varied career. It can be really rewarding and varied. And hopefully that would be enough encouragement for people. We need more youth coming through. We need more diversity, I think, coming through to sales. And you two are a good example of that sitting in front of me. So.
Yeah, I think I was talking about it to an older colleague the other day, saying how lucky are we that we get to make a really good living out of engaging with people, spending time and having conversations, getting to know advisor businesses and working on a relationship and building it from there. And I think if I think back to my career, whether it was working in collections or working with you in multi-asset, everything you learn, you just continue to build on. And it might be that salespeople go on to become an advisor. Salespeople might go on to run a mentor business or performance coach.
Yeah.
The skills that you learn are so transferable throughout any industry. I think that's one of the reasons why we all love it so much, right? Because there's so many different routes. It's not just management that you can go into.
Yeah. It's very varied, and you're right. You get a lot of transferable skills, But you said earlier, if you were talking to a load of graduates, and the reason I said about if you enjoy meeting new people and going, and engaging with people you don't know and finding out stuff about them. The reason I mention that is that we think that's dead enjoyable, don't we? Because we're in sales. And there will be some people who find that dead enjoyable because they want to be in sales. There are other people who, my wife sometimes, I'll go along to meetings and she'll say, "Oh yeah, how was the meeting today?" I said, "Oh yeah, it was really good and I engaged with this." She said, "You didn't know anybody?" "No, I didn't know anybody." "Well, you went to a meeting and you didn't know anybody?" "No." "Oh, I'm not sure I'd like that." And actually that's half the pleasure. So people are wired differently, aren't they? And we think it's all obvious and enjoyable. And if you think that, then you're probably in the right role. But if you just as easy, some people don't. So
yeah. At least you still want to have a conversation at the end of the day. Sometimes I like to sit in a dark room.
Yeah, run out of words.
Talk time's
Social
over.
battery's gone.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you are right. Sometimes your talk battery can run low, can't it? Yeah, do more listening. That'll improve it.
Well, Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and we're just incredibly grateful for you sharing your insights.
More than welcome.
If you were to leave one last piece of advice for the trusted community, what would you tell them?
My legacy, one last piece of advice. What would it be? I think talking as a salesperson, one big piece of advice. I think if you get up every morning thinking that all you want to do, priority number one, is to make your clients' businesses the most successful businesses that they could be. And however you do that, the interaction, the ideas you share, the products you share, the questions you ask, get him to think about things differently. But if your number one goal is to make your clients' businesses the best that they could be, then guess what happens to you? Guess what your success is like? But you don't need to focus on your success, because if you focus on your client's success, then your success is just a byproduct of that, isn't it? And that's what's driven me over 30 years. Yeah, and I've never faltered from that. Always thought, if I can make my clients or the people who work for me the best that they can be, then guess what? The byproduct will be success for me. So it's not a bad adage.
Brilliant.
Nice words, nice legacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks very much for your time.